Now, CCTV correspondent Esther Zou actually caught up with the author of this World Economic Outlook report, that's IMF chief economist Olivier Blanchard. And she started off by asking him what his thoughts were on some of the economies that were really going to lead the recovery this year.
I think if you look at advanced economies, the recovery is becoming stronger, becoming broader. Now, this is creating a different environment for the emerging market economies, because on the one hand, the fact that the advanced economies are doing well is helping them for export, but it also means financial conditions are a bit tougher and will be tougher. So they have to navigate this. But in general, the news is good.
Well, in recent months, the IMF has suggested the ECB to take more easing measures in order to reverse the job of inflation in the Eurozone. But what about the Federal Reserve? Do you have any suggestions for them? Because it seems that the inflation of the United States has been under its target for very long.
I think the situations are quite different. I think in the US, I think the Fed is acting as it should. And I don't think the danger of deflation is there. The US recovery is very strong. The ECB has a tougher job because our baseline doesn't have deflation. Deflation is a risk, and deflation would really be bad. So they have to do what they can do. There are a few measures that they are thinking about that they could take, and they will probably take. But it will take more. The ECB doesn't have a magic bullet, right? It will help, but other things have to happen.
And also in this report, the IMF keep its outlook for the Chinese economy in 2014 unchanged. So why is that? Can I understand that way that the fund is not so concerned about the reforms that has been and will be carried out by the Chinese government will have a big impact on the speed of the nation's GDP growth? I mean,
we think the reform program is a good one, and we're impressed by the commitment of the authorities to actually do it. But even if they do it, it's not going to affect growth, this quarter or very much this year. For the moment, we think that growth in China is fairly solid. We think that China will be able to handle the credit issues that they have, that they'll be able to slow it down. That if it slows down too much, they will probably do more investment, which is not great in the long run because you need to go to consumption, but would be good now. So yes, we remain optimistic that growth will be in the 7.5 range.
Actually, it has been over 4 months since the Federal Reserve started its tapering. So according to your observation, how is the global liquidity flow right now? And do you think the emerging markets are doing fine in this what we call post-QE era?
We have to understand that the world is changing, that again, the enormous liquidity which went to the emerging markets is to some extent going to come back. So the emerging markets have to handle this. They can. They just have to let their exchange rate adjust. If it's too much, they can intervene in some way to limit the decrease. They have to make sure that they don't have major weaknesses. But so far, I would say most of them are doing fine, are adjusting, and I don't see a big issue.
And what impact will the Ukraine crisis have on the global economy, and what countries do you think that will suffer the most pain from the spillover of this crisis?
Given what has happened, it's clear that the investment climate in Russia is not going to be very good. It's not very good already, but it's not going to get better. So I think Russia will probably have lower growth next year than if this had not happened. This is not going to affect the world very much. It's going to affect its neighbors. And there are many ex-Soviet Soviet countries which depend very much on Russia. So they will suffer a bit. But for the world, for the moment, no major geopolitical impact.